You'll be able to see this on YouTube uh, in any time in the future. So with that, welcome everyone. This is our monthly Gar Byram monthly luncheon, and as in the past, I can't even remember in the past anymore, but I recall a long time ago we used to have a good spaghetti dinner with the or lunch with these programs, but I don't even know what spaghetti tastes like anymore. But
I remember the Chinese dinners before that.
Mexican, Mexican.
with that, Meryl, I don't know if you want to kick it off, but I know Chris will do the introductions, but I don't know if you have any other announcements and before the meeting. Oops, you're on mute.
Meryl, you're muted.
Here we go.
Meryl, you're muted. We can't hear you.
Trying to unmute. Here I'm unmuted. No, I have no announcement at the present time. Go straight to Chris.
Okay.
All right. With that, my pleasure.
Who's having lunch?
Yeah, he's got a spaghetti bowl over there. My pleasure to introduce Chris, who's been doing a fantastic job at identifying some of the best speakers, and that's what we're doing with this club, is just getting some really good information and good and having a lot of great speakers. So with that, Chris, go ahead and lead us off. Thank you.
Okay, before I introduce our two speakers today, I want to point out that we have a wonderful program coming up. We have Jeanette Royston, who's here today. She'll be speaking at the end of the month. And Janice Elliott is here too from the Upland City Council. She'll be speaking later in the year. And Andy too has offered one of his insightful talks as well. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Pastor Brown and Lisa Engdahl, who will be speaking on no-knock warrants. A little bit about Pastor Brown. He's the senior pastor of Brown Memorial Temple. He's also first vice president of the Pomona Valley chapter of the NAACP, and he's father of 3 daughters, 1 son, and grandfather of 7. Lisa Engdahl is co-general director of Servant Partners, which is an international Christian ministry serving urban communities in the U.S. and squatter slum communities abroad. She's president of Clean and Green Pomona, which is a grassroots environmental justice organization. Lisa and her husband, Derek, have a 16-year-old daughter that's 1 year older than mine soon will be, Natalia, and has lived in Pomona for over 20 years. So I introduce you to Pastor Brown and Lisa Engdahl, speaking today on no-knock warrants. Whenever you're ready.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Claremont Democratic Club leadership. Chris, it's like I know you. You've been sending these emails out. It's almost like, boy, I know you. But today is a special day. Today is the birthday of the NAACP. NAACP was established February 12th, 1909 in New York City. And it was established by an interracial group of activists. Many folks think it was just a bunch of Black folks, but no, it was all of us coming together. And it was partially in response to the 1908 Springfield, Illinois riot. And in that event, 2 Black men being held in a Springfield jail for alleged crimes against a white man. They were transferred to a jail in another city, spurring a white mob to burn down 40 homes in Springfield's Black residential district, ransacked the Black local businesses, and they murdered 2 African Americans. The purpose of the NAACP is to ensure political, educational, social, and economic equity of rights of all persons, and to eliminate racial hatred. The mission of NAACP in the 21st century is to ensure all of those above: political, educational, social, economic equity of rights of all persons, and to eliminate race-based discrimination. The national NAACP initiatives include political lobbying, publicity efforts, and litigation strategies developed by its legal team. The NAACP enlarged its mission in late 20th century by considering issues such as police misconduct, the status of Black foreign refugees, and questions of economic development. Some of you may know, but the Pomona Valley NAACP serves 10 cities, 5 in eastern Los Angeles County and 5 in western San Bernardino County. In East LA County, Pomona, Diamond Bar, San Dimas, Claremont, Laverne. In San Bernardino, Ontario, Upland, Chino Hills, and Montclair. And our president who is with us today is Jeanette Royston. And we are currently in a recruitment mode. So I hope that some of you will consider becoming members of the Pomona Valley NAACP. I know some of you are now. And here's some of the things that we're doing. So we're here today and we want to give you some information on our current events. In late summer of 2020, we received a complaint, and that's what happens with each NAACP branch will receive a complaint. And the complaint was regarding the use of a no-knock warrant served by the Pomona Police Department. The warrant was served, it was served on an elderly couple and their grandchildren. And I'd like to introduce Miss Lisa, who happens to be the next door neighbor, and she can tell you her story from there. Lisa?
Thank you, Pastor Brown, and thank you for the wonderful opportunity to be with all of you today. And I just want to acknowledge President Jeanette and Vice President Brown for the NAACP's amazing work in this effort. President Jeanette was our fearless leader through the whole process and really kept us together and focused on the issue of prevention of the loss of life. So I just want to share my personal experience briefly, which I brought forward to the NAACP. And so I'm actually going to just read to you what I shared with our Pomona City Council, because it's short and to the point. So here's my personal experience. On May 9th of 2013, I was home after school with my 8-year-old daughter and 2 of her friends. They were playing Wii Sports in our living room when a bomb exploded. It shook our house and was very traumatic. I felt dizzy and nauseous after the explosion. I immediately rushed the children to the back of our house, not knowing what had just occurred and what danger we were in. When I called the police non-emergency number, I discovered that the explosion was a flash grenade. The police raided 2 houses on our street in military style, serving warrants. One home was a known gang house. The other, next door to us, is not. It is owned by a nice older couple. During the raid, the older gentleman next door to us started to go into shock, and his wife asked the police if she could take him outside or give him food, but they wouldn't let her respond to his distress. She also asked to remove her 5-year-old granddaughter from the raid, and they would not let her. My husband and I and our next door neighbor went to speak to the city council about this incident, but for some reason the council meeting was canceled. I submitted a letter about the incident on behalf of our group to the council, but no one responded. On July 15th of 2013, my husband and I met with Police Chief Keedle. The chief admitted to us that some procedures were violated during the no-knock raids on our street. We appreciate that he admitted to those errors. He assured us he would follow up with the situation with his officers. In late December 2016, at about 4:45 in the morning, about 10 flash grenades were detonated in the house across the street from us, which was a gang house, and at our next door neighbor's house, which is not a gang house. My husband and I were awakened by the explosions, and once again, it was very frightening and disorienting. At the home next door to us, a flash grenade was blindly thrown into our neighbor's living room. Their 2 granddaughters, a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old, were sleeping in that room. These precious children could easily have been hit by a flash grenade. Thank God they were not. In situations where flash grenades have hit children, They have been severely burned. This is the risk that the Pomona Police Department took in executing this warrant. We learned from the police that the suspect they were looking for wasn't at either home where they performed the SWAT raids. They eventually found him in the community a few blocks away. Since that time, my husband and I had several conversations with the police and other public officials in Pomona about no-knocks and flash grenades. As a city, we were inches away from a tragic injury or death. And those conversations prior to my bringing a complaint forward to the NAACP went nowhere. It was, there must have been a good reason for it. Maybe you don't understand the whole situation. And we were directly present as neighbors and heard the direct testimony of our neighbors. So in August, I approached my friend who I'd worked with a bit on Clean and Green Pomona, who is now the council member for District 3, Nora Garcia, and asked her, do you think we could do something about this? And we felt that we could do it if we could, we wanted to approach the NAACP for help. So the reason for that is that commitment to social justice, the commitment to the city of Pomona, especially we knew, and then trustworthy leadership. And I'd met President Jeanette before. And so we brought it forward and like Pastor said, issued a formal complaint, and they took it on as something to work on. And over the next 6 months under Ms. Jeanette's leadership, we gathered and we met with Police Chief Ellis to talk through things, learn from one another. And in the end, he had a different proposal than us. We wanted a full ban and he wanted something with some room to still do it. But we agreed we would bring both forward to the council for debate. And it passed on February 1st, 7-0. All yeses, and there were about 30 people from the community who came to speak. And both in writing or in speaking showed their support. There was no one that came to oppose it, which was, I thought, just totally amazing. But that was the work of the NAACP in responding to the needs that we had on our street as neighbors, and then particularly our neighbors who suffered these very difficult and traumatic raids. So I just, want to express my appreciation for that. And I feel now, after this has passed, a sense of relief, the thought that we're not going to have a tragedy like happened in Louisville with Breonna Taylor, that we're not going to go through that in Pomona. And I appreciated that whole team of leaders that was gathered, feeling like we don't need to wait for there to be a tragedy. We can prevent something. So that's my story.
So what we did, we reached out to the chief of police. I sit on a couple meetings with him. We reached out to him. NAACP president reached out to him, and to his credit, he met with us. Just as Lisa said, we met every other week from August until January. And something happened, because from August, September to early October, Chief was saying, yes, I could see it. Yes, we don't use it. Yes, we don't need it. Then all of a sudden he came back and said, well, he wanted to leave it on the books. And so when we took it to city council, and we thought there might be a fight, but after the comments that went forth by individuals, and it wasn't an adversarial, but people just like Lisa telling this story. And then the city council voted 7-0. So it was an accomplishment, but it's only the start. So I told President Jeanette I had an epiphany. That's one city out of 10. And so what we want to do now is to research the other 9 cities, and we want to see who is still on the books, has the no-knock warrants, and we want to use the same playbook with them. And as I stated to President Jeanette, to the council persons, we may not have the same results, but we could put the same efforts in. And if I can just, I can't just give this back to you, Chris, without Miss Jeanette saying something about it, because she was so instrumental in this. Jeanette?
Well, I don't want to take up your time because you do, Lisa and Pastor, you guys are doing such a fantastic job, and I really do appreciate your leadership. And Lisa, I really appreciate you, actually considering the NACP to support you in this idea of a safe community. And what you have said thus far, I'm very, very pleased to hear that. But I do want the audience to know that we did a thorough research in various, we went to the US magazine, we went to NPR. Lisa did a thorough research as to the no-knock in other cities and other states. And that is actually what pushed us to want a ban as opposed to a policy. So we wanted a ban because we'd already know that there are other, as a result of the Kentucky situation with Breonna Taylor, that was a loss of life. But in Houston, Florida, and West Virginia, nothing had happened as of yet, but yet they put a ban in place. So we really wanted to make sure that the city of Pomona was a model and to follow the suit to ban the no-knock warrant in the city of Pomona. So I appreciate that, Lisa. And I want the audience to know that Lisa actually, the team, we put together a 7-page research. And I could send this to you if you're interested. I know all of you may be resident of the city of Claremont, of course, but we want to remember that the cities in the Pomona Valley, we are all connected by a street, a cross street in one way or the other. So we are looking forward to protect a community, which is the Pomona Valley. And the research that we actually was able to pull together, you're welcome to it. But I'm very, very pleased to hear Pastor Brown and Lisa's presentation. And I probably can't really add to it no more than the fact that we're looking to move forward, and we hope that you all would all kind of chime in with us and get on board with us, whatever you can do. And if there's any questions, I guess we can all.
Yeah, so we're gonna provide, it's a 7-page summary. Read it, because what we found out is not only was individual civilians getting hurt, but police officers also. And we approached this from the fact that we did not want to put our police officers in that type of a situation. So we're going to be researching. We haven't looked into the other cities yet, but Janice, I would love to have a conversation with you. And because we just feel that it should be brought up. We feel that once you have an opportunity to really read like we did, all I ever knew was Breonna Taylor, but then to look over the years of how this had developed. And real quickly, no-knock warrants were developed, was initiated by President Nixon on his war on crime. And then it was used as a tool to break into the drug dealer's house so that they wouldn't flush the drugs down the toilet. It's antiquated, it's not necessary. And so we just want to bring this up. And I really want to thank you for providing us this opportunity to share with you. Thank you, Chris.
Can I just point out one other thing also having to do with funds? If I may, when these no-knock warrants go botched up where someone ends up losing their life or injured, the city or the state actually have to bear the burden of financing or settling financially. And that is an issue with various cities. So we didn't want the city of Pomona to bear the burden of some settling because of a no-knock went went bad. So we took that in consideration as well. And our 7-page research actually speaks to that. So it was pretty thorough. I'm sure you might be able to add to it, but it was pretty thorough. But as Pastor said, the no knock came into existence, of course, with the Nixon, with the war on drugs. Well, the war on drugs, I mean, they're still selling drugs, but you know, we do hear, and we also know in the state of California that it is illegal. The no knock warrants in the state of California is illegal. Hello. So why are some cities still? So that's where Pomona, the city of Pomona, actually allowed the people to speak and listen to their constituents and banned it completely, because it's already illegal, but they still do it from time to time. But how would we have known that? Because I've been told that, and we researched that it's illegal in the state of California. But why is it still happening? So do your research, and you may hear some police chief tell you, "Oh, it's illegal in the state of California." Oh, okay. Well, and if it ever comes an incident down the road that they may need to use it, they're going to use it, and it's okay. And then, as we said, we have already noticed that some people have lost their lives, police officers have lost their lives. So we just want to make sure that we protect and prevent any tragedy from happening in our city. And I call the city of Pomona the fabulous city where I consider my home. So I didn't want that to happen in my home if we could prevent it. So I really appreciate Mayor Sandoval and his team. He was able to really support it. I support the chief of police. He worked thoroughly with us because he actually said, you know, Jeanette, I can only give you guys a policy. And we said, no, we want to hold out for a ban. We want it to be banned. He said, well, we don't use it. We said, well, we'll take it to the city and let the city decide. And that's what we did. And we only needed 4 votes for it to pass. We ended up getting 7 votes. So we were excited about that. So we really kind of say thank you to Tim Sandoval. Thank you to our Chief Ellis. He was fantastic. He was thorough. He was honest, on point. He did all he can do. He couldn't guarantee us what we wanted, so we took it to the city.
Okay, Jeanette,
there
can I jump in?
Yes, I'm done.
So, Pastor Brown, I'll play traffic cop, for lack of a better metaphor here,
Okay.
for the questioning. Before we go to questions, I just want to point out to people that at the bottom of your Zoom screen, there should be a button that says reactions, and if you click on that, there's a button there that says raise hand. You should be able to raise your hand there. That's the preferred method. If you're not able to navigate there, just raise your hand like this and we'll get to you. I've already seen that, okay, people have changed places, so that screws me up. Mel was here at one point raising his hand, and yeah, there you are. Okay, you moved on me. You moved my cheese. And let's see, someone else had a hand up too. I think it was Ivan. So let's go with Mel, then Ivan. Pastor Brown and Lisa, I want you to keep on the back burner as you're fielding these questions, that I know our members are going to be hungry to hear, like, the 1 or 2 main points of your 7-page research paper. Okay, so if there's a lull, you might want to address that as well. And then Don can go third. Mel, you're up.
Okay, and Karen Chapman-Lentz also had her hand up. This is a very nice presentation today, and hopeful. You know, it's a long journey to try and take down the institutional racism that we have in our country. I was told there's a group that has identified 8 factors that are used in law enforcement that really should never be used. And one of them, I think, is the chokehold. Another is like no knocks. Does anyone know these 8, and is NAACP or other activists lobbying to eliminate all 8 of these practices in our area?
I can address that. I do not remember the 8, but yes, we are going back through that. We're taking baby steps. We're not trying to throw the whole sink at them, but we're trying to look at exactly, what can we do in our area of influence. So yes, we are looking at all 8.
And
And
one,
just-
speak to one of them right now is they refer to it as the STOP, and we're talking about the racial identity profile. We're working on that. That is one right now as we currently speak that we're working on. So there are 8, but I don't know them offhand, but I do know that is one of the 8 as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, they can be found at the Campaign Zero website, 8 Can't Wait. And they also have what they call a police scorecard, where they give a letter grade to each police force and give all the stats surrounding those things. So it's a very useful site.
Okay.
Can you repeat that site again, please?
It's from Campaign Zero. It's called 8 Can't Wait.
Is it possible, Lisa, to put it in the chat?
Sure, let me look it up and I can chat it to you all. Let's
Okay.
see here.
Thank you.
Okay, if we're done with that question, then we should move to Ivan.
Chris, can I just jump in here a quick second? I also want this group here to know that the NAACP Pomona Valley branch, we pretty much focus on what we call a state of California type of legislation, as opposed to the national. So I just want you to kind of keep that in mind. We are pretty much focused on the state of California type of issues and legislation. The state, the national is throughout the nation. So just kind of keep that in mind. I'm sorry, Chris.
Ivan,
Pastor Brown, you said you had a report with 7 bullet points or 7 points in it. Is that right? And I'm thinking maybe I'm kind of curious. I'd like to, if you could just read them off as if they were bullet points, so we get some sense of what's coming. Because look forward to that.
What we're looking at is that we looked at the playbook. We looked at the strategy that we used as we approached the Pomona City Council. And so we looked at champions. We looked at those city council members who would be sympathetic. We engaged the police chief, we engaged the mayor, and then we developed a strategy behind that. Now, I'm not sure, I think you went out on me a little bit as far as the 7 points. Which 7 points was it?
Dory, I thought you told us that you were going to give us a document that contains 7 points.
Oh, there is a 7-page
Oh,
summary
7 page.
report.
Okay. I'm
And
sorry.
so
Not
we'll
really
make
long.
that available so that each member of the club will receive that, definitely.
You don't want to give us an abstract of 100 words right now?
Lisa,
Sure, I could
just
give
a quick summary.
I could give a few things with it. I don't know if I'm able to share my screen. I could give you sort of what it looks like then, what you'll be getting, but basically it's a series of quotes from different major news pieces and all that. So for instance, the use of the no-knock warrant has increased substantially over time. By one estimate, there were 1,500 in the early 1980s, where there were 45,000 in 2010. So stats like that. And then there's examples provided of different people that were caught in no-knock warrants. Also that with the flash grenades. it goes back to the history of when they began, which Pastor's already described some of what that looks like. There's, let's see if there's a quote here that I can.
So basically, those incidents that have occurred, how they've affected individuals, how the policy was started, exactly how it proliferated. We give quotes that law enforcement says that it's not needed in this day and time. So a lot of that, we give that information to you from different sources.
And with them, like Pastor Brown mentioned, then all of the links are there in the article. It's all footnoted. So if you would want to read the complete article, that would be available to you as well. You know, things like, for instance, these were designed, you know, supposedly when they were set up for the really extreme circumstance. Well, they're only used about 5% of the time for those kinds of circumstances. And then, you know, some information on flash grenades as well. So their document is also available in Spanish, so we can send you both so that Spanish speaking folks could be included as well in seeing this information. So we can forward that to you.
So Don, do you want to ask your question now? And Mel, you could lower your hand, please. Then I see Merrill after Karen. Don
Sure,
Martins.
my question. This question, I'm sort of asking if anyone knows the answer to it, because I sure don't. Let's just say a police crew goes in and to a house. They get the wrong house. They blindly throw a flash grenade into a living room that falls in a playpen where there's a toddler sleeping, and that burns the face of this toddler. Let's just say this happens. I'm not saying it's ever happened, but who's going to pay for that that incident? It will be the taxpayer. It comes out of the taxpayer's money.
Yeah.
You know, the taxpayer doesn't get as good as schools. The taxpayer doesn't get potholes fixed because of something the police did. What happened? Well, why doesn't that mistake come out of the police pension fund so that a policeman, before blindly throwing a flash grenade into a living room, says, hey, this action is going to come out of my pocket if I screw up? Why doesn't that happen? Why can't we negotiate that with the police union?
And that's exactly what you're looking at. My son-in-law is a San Bernardino County Sheriff Deputy. I have 2 members of my church who are police officers. We've had a conversation, and they will say it's because of the negotiations with the police union. So just like they're trying to change the law where that the officer becomes accountable for their action, they have to fight the union in order for that to pass.
Okay, Jeanette wants to elaborate afterwards, then Karen's up.
Okay, pretty quick, to Don's point and to Pastor's remarks. The police union, that's a whole nother issue, which is the issue or the problem. And we're talking qualified immunity. That is the stronghold that the police union is holding. So if you really want to reform police and law enforcement, you really have to identify the purpose of qualified immunity, which again, the purpose of it is that no law officer or police officer, peace officer will be guilty of any wrongdoings in the line of protecting or their duties. That is why you hear so often in the past 15, 20 years, I fear for my life. I thought he had a gun. I thought he had a knife. I fear for my life. And we as the public, we are the body cameras. I see something, what I see, the police officer or qualified immunity, which is the police union, they're now taking a stand. The officer feared for his life. So if we really want police reform, if we really want it, we're gonna have to identify the purpose of qualified immunity. And I'm speaking on behalf of Brian Stevenson, which is a renowned civil rights attorney. He said we have to change the narrative. You guys do your research on that. Qualified immunity is what we have to identify. That's the stronghold. I don't know if that answered your question, Don, but you might want to do some research on qualified immunity, but that's it. And it's unfortunate. And again, that came about also with Nixon.
Okay, Karen? Don, you could lower your hand, and then Merle after that.
Karen, you need to mute yourself, unmute yourself. Karen, you're still muted. There you go.
Hello?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, this was very early in the talks. The first experience was in 2013, is that right, Lisa?
Yes. Mhm.
And then in 2016, you got a meeting?
No, 2013, and we followed up with that one, and that was the one where the police said, some of our policies were violated. I'll make the changes with the department. And then again, second incident was 2016. And then we had more conversations with because we've changed several police chiefs. So the one we had now wasn't around for any of these things.
Mhm.
And we met with police chiefs there, also some council people individually. But at that point, no one had heard that much about, like in the public dialogue, the flash grenades, the no-knocks, all of that was not highlighted in the public discourse. So when I was researching at that point to even understand, what do I even call what this thing was that happened? I found some articles, New York Times, different groups, but there's no database that tracks all of this. So just realizing there was, an experience with that.
And when was is it February 1st this year or February 1st last year?
February 1st this year is when it passed. Yes.
Oh, wow. That's wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Jeanette, you wanted to add to that? Jeanette, you're muted. Jeanette, you're still muted.
Okay, I apologize. I just want to add to Lisa. As a result of the passing of the no knock in the city of Pomona, they also agreed to now begin to collect data because they had not been collecting data. They had no data even to show us, during our conversation or our meeting. Well, as a result of the no knock, they also agreed to begin to start collecting data. So I just want to throw that in there. Thank you, guys. I'm going to put myself on mute again. I'm going to be quiet.
Okay, Merle, you're up. And if no one else has a hand, I've got a question after Merle. But if
Okay.
someone does, you get ahead of me. Go ahead, Merle.
I'm interested in the claim that the state of California no-knock is already outlawed. What was the response of police chiefs, city councils, and so forth to this knowledge? Didn't they say, oh, we obviously have the wrong policy here, let's get rid of it? I mean, that should have been what happened.
Well,
What we were-
oh, go ahead, Pastor.
What we were told by the chief in good faith is that the city of Pomona had not even used a no-knock warrant, and we had 2 incidents. So there was a response that, well, we don't even use that, so don't worry about it, but we don't want to take it off of our books.
Yeah, well, not taking it off the books means we could use it, of course, even though it's illegal.
Yes.
Well, and they wrote the law for the state with an exception clause in it. So I think that's where they get away with it. They have
I mean, there's some exception that a city may have.
from what my understanding, and I'm no expert on that part
I
of
know
it,
nothing, so that's
but where, if they feel there are these certain circumstances, they can go and appeal for it. So it was like, we're not using it, but we can get it under these circumstances, and we wanted the complete ban, no circumstances.
Okay.
So what
there
our
is
chief,
an exception in the state law that says a community, a city may, for certain specific purposes, use them.
Yeah.
Okay.
but what our chief, when he had his exception, one of the exceptions that he wrote into it was that in the event of trafficking,
Uh-huh.
in the event of trafficking, they would want to have the right, the exception to utilize it. So we're thinking trafficking, you're going to have some unarmed folks in there. You're going to have chaos and confusion. So this seems to be some of the things that they bring into these exceptions.
Human trafficking.
And what we noted from what we learned from the police is, of course, if a crime is happening, they can go in anytime, right? If there's kidnapping, human trafficking, terrorism, the warrant is served later when they're looking for the evidence, suspects. So they might go to one or several locations where that person might be. And like in our neighborhood, the person was not there. And they can also go to the wrong address. That's also so just the fallibility. Pastor Brown in our process really emphasized that point, which I thought was very brilliant, is like, human beings are fallible. Even if they're trying to do a very good job, they can make a mistake. But here if you're not identifying yourself and knocking, how do you correct for that mistake? So I appreciated his point with that.
Well, just one more point. What were the exceptions that the police chief in the end was willing to entertain so that the policy would remain and there was no ban? I mean, did they lay out what the circumstances would be where it could be used?
Yes.
Because trafficking wasn't an issue in Lisa's neighborhood, I take it.
Human trafficking, domestic terrorists, and there was 3.
Kidnapping.
And kidnapping. Hostage, holding someone hostage. He said he would use it. Those are the 3 possibilities that they would be used, or he would okay it to be used.
But that wasn't relevant to Lisa's situation.
Hello. But I also want to share, I'm going to put a little humor here. When he said he doesn't use it and have not been used, we said, okay, well, why don't we just kind of get rid of it? He says, well, you never know. So then one of the council members said, well, when I have to upgrade my phone, I get rid of my phone. I don't keep it around. So, when you don't use it anymore, you get rid of it. So my point is that if you're not using it, get rid of it.
Well, that's my point too, but my wife doesn't always agree.
So Merrill, if I could just jump in here, I did a little research on the web while we were talking. Some of you may have done the same. There is not a complete ban on no-knock warrants, so far as I could tell. Maybe some of you did more thorough research than I did. It looks like there are exceptions. The exceptions are for what they deem exigent circumstances. And then I've seen that they list 3 types of exigent circumstances, either that the people who are being served are are armed, they'll flee or they'll destroy evidence. So, if that's the exception that is inviting abuse, then there is something to be done then in banning no-knock warrants. I
Yeah,
did have a
you could-
question.
Oh,
Go ahead.
You could imagine those, if someone goes to a judge saying, I'm concerned about one of those circumstances, they would get a warrant. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? And a general, if an officer is saying that. So I think that open door that's there, it's significant.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I did the research was that if it's really the case, or if it were really the case that no-knock warrants were banned throughout California, then a 7-0 vote in Pomona City Council is an easy vote, right? They're voting to make illegal what they're already legally bound to make illegal, right? So there has to be some sort of impetus for casting that vote in the first place, and that would be to close off the exceptions. And that assumes that the localities do have the authority to close off those exceptions. My question is really for the two of you. When you were having your conversations with the police chief, it sounded like you had several conversations. What were they like? What happened in each one? Was there like a progression through from one conversation to the other? How were you making headway? Can you describe in a little bit more detail what those conversations contained?
The chief of police was respectful. He agreed to meet with us. He showed no animosity. We met every other week from August until through December. And he initially agreed and made those statements that he sees no reason for it. He doesn't use it. It hadn't been used, even though we know it had been used in Pomona. And so he was cordial. And then he made a statement that he needed to go talk to some other folks. He had mentioned about talking to the city attorney, and he mentioned some other folks. And he came back in late October and said that he was writing his policy to keep it in there. And I quote him, because he wanted to keep that arrow in his quiver. But if you never use it, if you don't anticipate using it, and if you have other remedies that you can use other than the no knock. So as Lisa say, if you feel that a crime's being committed, you can go on in. There's the what's the term, Lisa? The entry, what is it called?
Dynamic entry. Mhm.
Dynamic entry. You can use that justifies you going in. And because of the change in the laws dealing with marijuana and some of the other drugs, there's not this big need anymore to go in and try to save all the drugs for evidence. So it's the exceptions that they're using to try to keep the law in place.
Okay, does anybody else have a question? It looks like Andy has his hand up. And Karen, I saw your hand go up too. So Andy, then Karen, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to make a distinction and ask whether that distinction was made. Obviously, the concern that was expressed in both the examples you gave were the use of the flash grenades, of throwing one of these grenades into the house and the danger that it poses, as opposed to simply, not that I like the idea, kicking in a door. I mean, it's one thing. Did they simply agree not to be throwing flash grenades unannounced into somebody's house? Or did they agree that they would not knock, they would knock on the door and say, the police are here, please open, as opposed to kicking in the door? Those are very different circumstances. I don't like the idea of kicking in a door, but I can conceive of a situation with a kidnapping where you might want to do that, go in, surprisingly, and smash in the door and get in. But that still doesn't excuse throwing grenades into the house. So I guess what I'm asking is, in your discussions with the police and the city, what's been banned, what hasn't been banned? Have those distinctions been made?
Just like for the situation that we were in, there was both the no knock and the flash grenades, as I told in my story. if there had been a crime going on, they can just go in. So if someone's being held hostage, the police don't need any warrant. They just go right on in. But this way, the flash grenade is part of the surprise to stun people so they can't respond. And then the smashing in the door. So the no-knock says, if the no-knock is banned, they have to knock and announce that it is the police. Because some of the very bad situations where people die, they think they're experiencing a home invasion from criminals. And so they shoot back and it's the police. Because the police are being shot at, they shoot back at the people in the house. And in that confusion, people lose their lives. So we set the standard, the police have to knock and identify themselves. And you know, there's not a restriction yet on flashbangs or any of that kind of thing, or how that would be. From what the no-knock is, just the no-knock ban. But the flash grenades were part of how that was, how that surprise attack was enacted. And in the situation of our neighbors, my husband went over right afterwards, saw the smashed door frames inside. All of their electronics were confiscated. There was no repair done to any of that. There was none of that. None of those items were returned to anyone in the family. It was just a loss for them. Home repair, you know, burn mark in the floor from where the grenade landed. There you have it.
This is with your neighbor who, and what was the excuse for they're going after the neighbors? It was the wrong house?
You know, the link was where they said, oh, this house is suspect, is they had a daughter with an addiction issue. And so they thought she was connected to this guy they were looking for from the gang house across the street from us, which is now shut down. It's no longer there anymore. But they wrongly thought she was like involved, or he might be living there, or none of which was true. And she actually lived in a trailer in the back of yard of the house, not even in the main house. So they weren't even in the correct section of the house. If they were looking for her, she lived in the back.
If you get a chance, I'm sorry, Lisa, if you get a chance, go to YouTube and look at No Knock.
Okay.
And you will see many cases of unnecessary loss of life.
Yeah, no, I'm familiar with that. I guess, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Andrew.
No, what I was gonna ask is, I'm understanding now is they have to knock. They can't just break in without knocking. But but they could simply not say we're the police and throw a grenade through the window. Not even so. I mean, are there any restrictions on the use of these flash grenades in restrained places like a house? I mean, I'm trying to get a sense of what is it that's banned and what's not banned.
The flash grenades, my understanding, can be used in the dynamic entry. So if we feel that there's a crime going on, if we feel that could possibly be loss of life, we can go in there and we can toss those flash grenades. When we talked to the chief, he mainly just gave us an inventory of how many they had and not necessarily as to how they were going to be utilized.
Karen, you're still muted.
Now? Can you hear me now?
You just remuted yourself. So we did hear you momentarily.
Oh, I didn't hear anything back.
We could hear you now.
Okay, great. My concern was, you said that the police chief, there was no record of that being used. Don't they keep any kind of records? I just can't understand how you could not have what happened tonight, and then you have to write it up, and then you keep track. Are you serious that they didn't keep track of any kinds of stuff like this?
That was his statement, that they hadn't. And so as of 2021, they will start now to collect that data.
Thank you.
He's quoted in the Daily Bulletin that will begin. that will start happening. Data will begin to, that's quoted in the Daily Bulletin newspaper.
Okay, unless anybody has another question, I think we should wrap up now. Before we wrap, I just want to say something. I'm fascinated by the politics of this. It was a 7-0 vote. And there was some political risk involved because they were changing the law to eliminate those exceptions. And yet all 7 members of the council decided that it was a risk worth taking. I would like to put this in perspective for our viewers today. At the time that the Claremont City Council was considering similar topics, I wrote to find out what the city's policies were. And although I didn't ask about no-knock warrants, I did ask about the use of the cartoid chokehold and also about the use of pepper spray. And the answer I got through the council person who lives in my district, who represents my district, that's Ed Reese. He forwarded it to the police chief. The police chief responded. And what I learned is that chokeholds in the city of Claremont are banned administratively, but not legislatively. In other words, it's the police department that does not authorize their use, although the police department could reverse itself because nothing in the city legislation, the city code would prevent that. I also asked about pepper spray, and pepper spray is neither legislatively nor administratively barred, although the chief did say that there's no history at all, so far as she could tell, of its use in Claremont. In any case, let's thank Pastor Brown and Lisa Engdahl for their presentations today. I'll point out that at the end of the month, we're going to have Jeanette Royston present to the club. So we're very much looking forward to Jeanette's presentation on White Rage. It's a book, right? That book there, she's going to comment on that book. And I will now turn things over to our president, Sam Pedroza.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you again for the presentation. This is one of those that I think we can easily follow up and follow suit in our own town, and as Chris already started. So definitely something that we could follow up on and have the club back us up. At any rate, thank you all very much for spending the afternoon with us, and we look forward to having you at the next presentation and our club meetings. So with that, if there's no other comments, we're good to go. All right.
Stay well, everybody.
Thanks,
See you
everybody.
later.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. Thank
Thank you.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Lisa.